son of a bitch knocked itself cold. Cold my ass. He's dead. We killed it. We killed it. Fuck you! This is the Hey You Guys podcast. We're your hosts, Liam and Rob. And this week we covered Tremors. Probably one of my favorite films of the 80s. I'm just going to put it out there straight away. And I'm saying...
Well, it's a strange thing to say because it's actually 1990.
Say in the 80s because it was released in 1990, but it was due to be released in the 80s. But it was postponed.
Yeah, but it's still a 90s film then. It's okay. Wait. I'll give you this. Right, it was filmed in the 80s.
Okay.
It was filmed in the 80s.
Welcome to the Hey You Guys podcast. We're your hosts, Liam and Rob, and we covered Tremors, which is probably one of my favorite films of the 90s.
Yeah, there we go.
Happy?
Yeah, I'm much happy with that. I'm much more comfortable where we are. So, I mean, these are the movies of our youth, 80s, 90s. It doesn't matter. But let's not start the podcast with just like incorrect facts. I mean, let's get off on the wrong foot here. Jesus Christ.
So I guess what we'll go into first is the fact that I've seen it a few times. I already made my thoughts about this film clear last week, but you haven't watched it for a while. So I'm quite intrigued to understand your thoughts on it going off.
Yeah. So, I really enjoyed it. I mean, as I said, like I watched it a lot when I was younger, and I have like fond memories of it. But then I realized like I couldn't actually remember a lot of the film. I remember liking it, put it that way. But I was like, I haven't seen this film for like 20 years. And when I started watching it, like I'd say the first 20 minutes in particular, it was all super patchy. Like I couldn't remember it. It's really what I remember of it is the scene actually when they're in the town. When they're back in the town and everyone's like up on the roof and everyone's in their own little spot. And it's almost like they've created, it feels, even though it's like, obviously it's set out in the wilderness, whatever you want to call it, where it's actually filmed in California, isn't it? But it's kind of
I think it's like Nevada or something like that.
Well, it's supposed to be Nevada perfection, but it's actually filmed in, and I'm jumping in on facts a little bit here. It's filmed in Lone Pine, California, but it's one of those places. It's actually been like a whole bunch of films. It was in Gladiator. It was in Man of Steel. Man of Steel. I've got to assume it's the scene when he has the fight. In
Smallville, yeah.
Yeah, Smallville, and Iron Man. I assume again it's got to be the opening sequence. Well, towards the opening when he's like becomes Iron Man for the first time.
Well, either that, when he comes out and he shoots the tank with his little toy rocket.
Yeah. But yeah, supposedly it's just one of those places that it's just been used in a whole bunch of films. But anyway, the point is, it's like this, like that's the bit I remember because it feels like a set, and obviously it is a set just in the middle of California. But everything's like, it's like monster movie perfect. Everything is kind of, like in video games, like if you play like a Gears of War, you suddenly run into a room and there's all these like waist level kind of walls, which are just like, why are they there? The only reason they're there is for the game. It's kind of like this. There's just a bunch of buildings which are all perfect for one person to be on the top of each roof. And I think that's like the core of them, or certainly what most people remember. But going back and seeing it again, I mean, it's just like, how perfect the balance is between comedy and horror, and actually how successful the build-up is at the start. Because I think originally until the studio stepped in, they said, we want to sell this as a monster movie. It's like you can actually see it when you watch it again, that initially the plan was that you weren't supposed to know it was a monster. And they do a great job.
You're meant to think that it may actually be a guy up until the workers get killed.
Yeah. And you when you watch the film, it's like, you absolutely buy into that because there's no sign of monsters. It's just weird shit going on when they're leaving town. Yeah. But then after that, it's a pretty broad comedy up until people start showing up dead. And obviously the comedy remains, but it kind of shifts gears so successfully into kind of monster movie mayhem. And then once they get into the town and everything. But yeah, it's the kind of emphasis on characterization I thought really drags this film through. It's usually when you get a monster movie, and it's surprising that more films, sorry, I'm kind of rattling on a bit now, haven't followed the same suit. It's like, you have a cast of characters and they're all there just to be killed off. But in this film, they kill off a bunch of no-names, essentially, people you have no association with, most of them at the front end of the film. And then the rest of the film, nearly everyone survives of like the core group. I think it's just two die. The dude who dies in the tire.
Nesta.
And Egg Chen.
Yeah, Egg Chen goes, Walter. Yeah,
Egg Chen in the most blatantly homage kind of Jaws moment of all time. I mean, there's tons in this film, but that one is absolutely ridiculous. But there is an emphasis, obviously, on character. But one of the most interesting things they do, and is the way they get around that, is by, obviously, in most monster movies, there's a monster. And of course, at the end, the monster gets his comeuppance 9 times out of 10 and gets killed. But this film has 4 monsters, which is absolutely ingenious because instead of having to kill off the cast, you can actually kill off the monsters.
And you
have these moments of levity.
And you kill them all off in, pretty much completely different ways.
Yeah, really imaginative.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how they take them off. I mean, we'll go into how they all die a little bit sooner, but I wanted to go back to what you said about all the characters together. This movie wouldn't have been anything without Val and Earl, Fred Ward and Kevin Bacon.
Oh, they make it.
The way they bounce off each other is fantastic. It really is. You've got the subtlety of Fred Ward against the really over-enthusiastic, shouty acting of Kevin Bacon. Like, he loved doing this film. You can see he loved doing this film.
Oh, yeah. He loved the accents. Yeah. Like, really leaning into that hillbilly thing, shouting everything. Yeah. Fuck you, as you said at the top of the podcast.
In case nobody's ever figured it out, Liam loves an accent when he's doing these quotes at the beginning of the film. I cannot do an accent, so I never choose to. So
it's okay. You got to scream "fuck you." It's absolutely fine. But like to your point, I mean, they are leaning into this from the opening shot. I mean, I love the opening credits. Like the weird Tremors thing is quite bizarre. The title card, but then the first thing you see is Kevin Bacon in the middle of, the kind of the West, what you think of as a kind of classic Western setting. Yeah. Him pissing towards the mountains, dressed like an absolute hillbilly. And it's like his name even comes up next to him when he's pissing. And he turns around, he's got the accent, he's got the hair, he's got that kind of slightly dopey look about him. It's like he plays it so well.
Well, he plays
it is that chemistry which sells the film. Totally.
He plays that part, even right at the beginning as well, where they're doing the barbed wire, and he misses the nail 8 times before he hammers it in. And he actually did that on purpose, just to get a reaction from Fred Ward. And the reaction that Fred Ward gives is just like, you're a fucking idiot.
It's weird. Times? It's weird because going back and watching it again, I actually had to check this up because I just kind of, Valentine's obviously, his second name, isn't it? I think. Is it Valentine's second name or is it his first?
No, it's his first name. Valentine McKee, I think his name is.
Oh, Valentine McKee, of course. Yeah. And it's Earl. And I was like, wait, are they brothers? Because they act like brothers. Yeah. They totally do. And even my wife, because she was watching it with me, she was like, wait, are they like friends or brothers? And I was like, I'm not 100% sure. And it was, obviously I checked and they are just friends, but they totally have that brotherly vibe. And it, like you said, if you had 2 Kevin Bacons on screen, it'd be too much. Yeah. But they play off each other so well. And the rest of the cast do have more limited roles. Even the female lead, what's her name?
Finn Carter.
Finn Carter, yeah, it's a bizarre name. I've got it written. Rhonda Lebeck, which I'm not sure Lebeck has ever mentioned in the film. But she's fine in it. And she has good chemistry, I think, with Kevin Bacon, but the majority of the screen time feels like it's those two. Even when everyone else is there, it feels like the emphasis is always on those two first and foremost. Yeah. Well, of course, the fact that they knock it out the park helps the film no end.
And they're considered the screw-up handymen, but they're always the first people that everyone looks to do something.
Well, that might just be because they're the only people in town.
Yeah, not even the handyman part, but who's good on a horse? So we'll just send these 2 on a horse to go and get help. But as soon as something goes wrong, they're the first ones to be blamed as well.
Well, it's one of those things about this film, and it's one thing I noticed, was how many movies this is inspired by, and how many movies I think large parts of it are the inspiration for. And it's like when I was watching it, it's like the bits in the shop is classic. It reminds me of The Fog.
Yes.
There's obviously, obviously there was the death of Egg Shen, but there's so many Jaws references. I mean, this basically is just Jaws in the desert. There's no two ways about it. That
Egg Shen, we keep calling it Egg Shen. that Walter death is, you could have just superimposed that onto Quint dying in Jaws. It was
100%.
It was, again, I think we talked about shot by shot before we actually came onto this podcast, but it could have been shot by shot. Just replace Bruce, they called him Bruce the Shark, didn't they? In Jaws. So replace Bruce with a graboid. And you've pretty much got the same, because even the way he slashes him back and forth, it is.
Yeah, that bit is clearly a bang-on homage. But there's loads, like the way the truck gets pulled into the sand. Yeah. It's like a shit. The way if somebody's running and suddenly they get dragged, it's exactly the same as getting dragged into the water. The fact that their vibrations, they can pick it up. It's the same as paddling in the water. like when it picks up like a pogo stick, or I think when the builders kind of thing, it takes their drills first.
Yeah.
It's all, this is all stuff you've seen in Jaws, like right down to the way that they try and kill one of the last graboids with the bombs when they essentially go fishing for the graboid. I mean, it's not dissimilar to when they set up the explosives for the shark at the end of Jaws. So obviously Jaws is all over this, but there's stuff from Aliens, which is before, essentially the seismograph works just like a motion detector from Aliens. There's so many homages to Evil Dead. When everything from the point of view of the graboids is just classic Evil Dead, where it's just the camera moving across the ground. That is just the Deadite camera, isn't it?
That's actually a good shot, yeah.
And in terms of what it's inspired subsequently, and I'm not sure if this is bang on, but I mean, the obvious one, Starship Troopers in terms of monster design, all like really similar. Jurassic Park in terms of don't moving, there's a lot of that similarities to the T-Rex scenes. But the most obvious one I thought was actually in terms of tone, in terms of characterization, I thought it was Shaun of the Dead, which I thought there was so many similarities between this, especially with the character of Kevin Bacon's Valentine. I mean, obviously he's got a friend who's, a bit more useful than Sean's best friend, of course. But like the whole thing is he's like the dumber, he's like the useless one, or, the kind of unreliable one. But slowly throughout the film, he just takes on more and more responsibility and becomes more and more of a hero. And tonally, again, in terms of getting that balance between horror and comedy right, like, have any films done it better than Shaun of the Dead and Tremors? Like, I don't think they have.
No, I don't think so.
I'd be surprised if, I can't say this with any guarantee, but I'd be amazed if Edgar Wright wasn't hugely inspired by Tremors when he made Shaun of the Dead. It's just, as I said, it was just one of those things, when I was watching it, I was like, I'd never noticed it before. All the films it's taken from, and then all the films that I've subsequently taken from it. But it all comes together and makes this, like, perfect whole. It's such a fantastic movie, back to front. And that, sorry, you did ask me at the top. I don't think I ever answered you what I thought of this film. If it's not clear, I really, really like this fucking film still, unsurprisingly.
Yeah, again, I spoiled it last week. I spoiled it at the beginning of this. I've always had a soft spot for this film. This film is great. Probably one of the first monster films I probably saw as a kid. I mean, it's probably one of the easiest monster films you could probably watch as a kid. It's not really. It's like Jaws. It's sweeter compared to a lot of the other monster films or slasher films back.
Oh yeah, it's the comedy element. Like, and it's not just that it's funny and lighthearted. The violence isn't overtly violent. There's some scenes, especially again in the opening, because that's when the majority of people die. Like the face in the sand, and obviously the old man stuck at the pot. It's like, those bits are relatively unpleasant. The guy, when you see the construction worker's helmet with like the bits of brain in it or whatever kind of thing. But this film isn't full of, genuine horror. There's not like loads of gruesome deaths or anything like that. It's more tone and just the fear of getting caught. I mean, the grossest thing in it are definitely the graboids themselves, which, by the way, I'm just going to say this straight up. They are the best monsters with the worst names. Graboids is a fucking shit name for these monsters. They're amazing design. And again, the practical effects that are used in this are spectacular throughout, and they totally hold up. But the name Graboids, give me a fucking break. And they even have a scene. They have a scene when they're all trying to make a name. And I'm like, this is the best name you can come up with. A goddamn Graboids. They don't even grab that much.
As you're talking about them, and you said they look good, I want to cover one of the facts. One idea by the special effects crew was for the worms to have an outer shell when above the dirt. The shell would retract to reveal a slimier inner worm. However, many production members started to giggle at the phallic resemblance it had with the foreskin. So this was changed to the big worm sprouting several smaller worms from its mouth.
Yeah, you know what? The thing is, it's a worm. It's like there's always the danger of it looking like a dick. Like, if it's going to look like a dick, it has to look like the scariest dick ever. It's like, like an alien's head or something like that. So it's like,
as it's popping out, you can imagine then it just retracting its foreskin.
It's not a good look. They probably made the correct choice. And it looks just like the Sarlacc pit, but it looks like the Sarlacc pit came out of the sand. There's no two ways about it. But it's super gross. I love the fact that there's 4 of them, as I already said, and the fact that it has like tentacles in its mouth. And that's another, like, in terms of a monster, but with essentially other monsters in it. I mean, that was taken by Cloverfield.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they actually detach, but, you know, it's a similar thing that, of course, you have the big one, but you can have those gross tentacle with mouths moments as well.
Wait until I tell you about the life cycle of a graboid if you're on about detachment, but we'll get to that.
I look forward to it. But yeah, like, again, I mean, speaking of the physical effects, which obviously hold up incredibly well, it's not just that those combined with the clothes in particular and the setting make this such a bizarrely timeless film. Like,
yeah.
If nobody told you when this was made or when it was set, the only things that give it away are the lack of mobile phones and Melvin's clothes. But even Melvin's clothes, like the 90s are back in.
Melvin could be retro, yeah.
Yeah, if you saw a kid now with Melvin's clothes, you'd be like, yeah, that's what kids dress like today. But you look like that classic Western look, like their jeans are fitted, they look quite modern. I was just like, if they made the same film now and Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward, that's his character's name, Fred Ward, were wearing the exact same clothes with the exact same fit, you'd be like, yeah, that's a completely reasonable thing to wear.
But in that climate, that's probably what they're wearing anyway. Like,
dude,
it doesn't matter at the time, yeah.
Short of the heart on the belt buckle, I was pretty much dressed like Kevin Bacon today. I mean, I was wearing like a cowboy style shirt. I had the jeans, I had boots on. I was like, wait, did I do this on purpose? What the fuck?
Yeah, but the cowboy hat was a bit much. You could take it off now, Liam. You're inside the house.
Oh, no, there's no way. I mean, that is the one thing I'm missing. I mean, Bethany was saying this, like, dude, he's dressed up like you. The only thing you're missing is the hat. I was like, dude, if I could get away with the fucking hat, I'd be wearing the hat.
Guess what you're getting for Christmas?
Yeah, a cowboy hat, dude. No, jokes aside, I'd fucking love it if you bought me a cowboy. Because I can't quite bring myself to buy myself a cowboy hat.
If somebody bought you a Stetson, you'd be all up for it.
A cowboy hat? I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to wear the fucking cowboy hat as a gift.
Anyway. You're a 6'8" Welshman living in Edinburgh at the moment, right? Which means you're not as pasty, but you're more taller than most of the people you're walking around. More taller, yeah. I know. Yeah, I was hoping we'd skip past that.
No, I'm calling you out on every fucking one.
Yeah. So if you're dressed like a cowboy as well, my God, you're standing out like, well, a graboid with a foreskin at this point.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, dude, it's one of those things like people, I mean, obviously, there's something about being 6'7", but it's fine. It doesn't matter. Once you get above 6'4",
oh, look, as your brother said, if you're over 6'5", you're fucked anyway. So
yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter. But it's like it's quite liberating being this tall because you get noticed anyway. So it's like, yeah, I might as well wear a fucking cowboy hat. That's why I had the Dodge with the fucking racing stripes. Because it's like, why not? There was a dude, and back in primary school, you don't remember the other kids' dads or anything like that. There was one kid who he wore a cowboy hat and he drove around in a fucking Trans Am with a phoenix on the bonnet and like the exhaust down the side. That was like 34 years ago. I still remember that dude. I was like, dude was badass. I want to be that dude.
If you dress up like a cowboy, get a small little guy to act Italian and walking around and just pull off some midnight cowboy shit. Just start banging at taxi cabs and I said taxi cab because it's New York. Like, I'm walking here. Just
I was gonna say midnight cowboy stuff. I was like, I'm gonna have to explain to my wife that I've become a male whore. It's like, Rob said it was cool, so I'm really going for it.
You don't have to go that far, mate. But if you want to go full method, go full method.
No, dude. If you buy, let's make it clear now. If you buy me the hat, I'm gonna fuck women for money. Like, there's no two ways about it now. I just need to find a little friend, like a little pimp. Who will, invariably become a good friend of mine. Will die at the end of the story, of course. As spoiler alerts for Midnight Cowboy. But yeah, I think we're getting off piece now anyway. But one of the things going back and watching this film, and it's one of those things like I find so surprising, is that there aren't more, well, certainly successful horror westerns. Like other than the obvious nods to Jaws, similar to Sea, it's like you're in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing there. It's easy to convince people that there's no way to get out. Yeah. That you're kind of all right. There's no one's coming to save you. Of course, mobile phones are a constant issue in the modern world, in modern cinema. But even that, if you're out in the sticks enough, you can say, you'd be like, well, I'm in the middle of nowhere, nobody has a signal. But and obviously in this film, they're just like, well, the CB radio is out. One of those things that ages the film. But I was like, why aren't more films set out in the West, in the middle of nowhere? The only two, there are more, sure, but in terms of successful ones, the only ones that came to mind were Bone Tomahawk, which is fucking dope, which is a period piece as well, but that film's amazing.
That film is special.
Yeah, that film is amazing. If you haven't seen Bone Tomahawk, fucking watch Bone Tomahawk. And Near Dark, another absolute classic, one we'll almost invariably end up doing
considering we
on the
mention
podcast.
Near Dark like every week, we're gonna have to cover.
Yeah, we're doing Near Dark, but Near Dark is more like, I guess, a neo-Western horror, I guess you'd call it. Yeah. But so few horror films take advantage of this amazing setting. It's the same with like when I saw 30 Days of Night, I think it's set up in it's not the Antarctica, is it? It's set in Alaska.
Burrow, Alaska, something like that.
Yeah. And it's an amazing set. And I was like, oh, dude, so many films are going to copy this setting now. And it just never happened again. And I just thought it was a bit of a surprise because, you know, really going out into, you know, the West, into the middle of nowhere in the United States, because obviously with the size of it, there really are these places. It's like, especially with these ghost towns and stuff in America now, where it's just, you're basically off the map. It's like you could have a great setup for a modern horror film, but not many do it, which is quite a surprise.
Going back to what you said about the CB radio, I did enjoy what they said about the fact that they can't connect themselves with Bixby, the town over, because the mountains just won't let it connect. So basically, that CB radio is just for them to talk to each other. That the 14 residents that are in this town is literally for them to just bounce off each other or order from Walter, Shen, whatever you want to call him at this point. Do you know what I mean? So I thought that was quite good for that to explain. So
it does a great job of immediately telling you.
They're in their own bubble. They're in their own ecosystem.
Totally isolated. Isolated. And as you say, like all that needs to happen is one road collapses and they're like, well, we're fucked. Obviously, they can't hide because these like giant worm graboid things are going to come murder them. So, you know, immediately there's no questions in your head as to why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? Immediately you're on board because you're just like, oh, they're fucked. Like, you know, everything they do, you can kind of get on board with. You know, so many horror monster films, you're constantly, well, maybe not literally shouting and scream, but you have that issue of like, why are you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? But in this, you're like, well, they haven't actually got many options other than what they do. And again, it's one of the reasons the movie works. As ridiculous as the ending might be, you're like, well, yeah, that's it. And let's be clear, like, they don't actually go far. Like the scope of this film is really small. There's a reason it's 95 minutes long. Yeah. They go, you know, it's a dusty road that's closed off. They drive back up a dusty road. There are a few stones in the desert. They stand on those for a bit. They pole vault. They get into this tiny town. They all almost get killed. They go down the road. There's a few more stones. The film ends. That's it.
Aside from as well, Walter's store and Bert and Helen.
Bert and Helen,
Bert and Helen's. We'll get into his rec room in a sec. But
great.
Aside from those two interior shots, the rest of the film is exterior, which is very good.
Yeah, well, that like we were saying about like the town of I keep forgetting the name of
Perfection.
Perfection, ostensibly being set up as this perfect little movie town. You know, and you know, most of them, you know, we've talked about the charm of these 80s movies and having perfectly purpose-built sets, and these like they almost look like 50s towns rather than 80s towns. But with this, you know, they have like 4 buildings. And you're like, well, yeah, that's fine because there's only 18 people in town. And really, you don't give a shit because it's all just one giant set piece for the worms to try and kill them. Yeah. But then that is the surprising thing again, is like you think, oh, well, this is where everybody dies. And hardly anyone dies. And really what it is an elaborate way of killing 4 giant worms. That really is the crux of the movie. And as you say, they do it in such imaginative ways, right down to that final ridiculous kill. But, you know, I thought, you know, I think maybe because of his prevalence in the sequels, Bert now this is, I thought they were going to have a bigger part in this. Like in my head, I was like, oh, Bert's a massive part of this film. But he really isn't. Bert and Heather, they have their big 80s scene. You know, like we've said it in so many films in the past. They just have these weird scenes in the 80s where they were like, all right, we're just going to shoot 1,000 rounds of ammo. And they have it in this as well with Bert and Heather, where they're just like, dude, is the worm not dead yet?
I'll cover more in Legacy because obviously there's 7 films of this. But Bert comes more into his own when he teams up with Val in number 2. And then from then on, not Val, sorry, before anyone tells me off, Earl, Val and Bert and Earl. Bert and Earl, Bert and Ernie, Bert and Earl. And then from 3 onwards, then it's the Bert show. But I'll go into all that when we into Legacy. But you're right, the way they kill it, like the rec room kill for a start. I mean, even as a worm, fucking hell, you are screwed going into that guy's house.
Oh yeah, I love that they just turn it up to 11. They're just like, yeah, let's give them 1,000 guns. Do you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Murphy's death in RoboCop, where they just lined up and they just get more and more guns, more and more bullets. But it's less gross because they're shooting at a worm rather than a poor defensive.
And then you just pull out the elephant gun.
Yeah.
The thing that you're in that such smaller setting, you are death by the time you've shot that thing.
Well, I think they literally say, it's like, all right, it's a pretty small room, and they're going to be shooting at a worm, which is coming, a grabber, which is coming through the wall. It's like, well, we can't have a bazooka because that's going to kill fucking everyone. But what's the next best thing? And of course, you hear elephant gun and a 7-foot-long shotgun. It actually reminded me of the Joker's gun from Batman '89, the one he pulls out of his pants. Like, it's just so ridiculously long. But yeah, it's a great scene, and it's actually a great advert for like right-wing, over-prepared, over-armed Southerners in the United States. Because in this film, it's like, he's very much a man of our times, like a total paranoid case, as you get nowadays. But of course, the monsters do actually come to town. He's the one like, oh, dude, I've actually got the guns. We're prepared.
Can I raise a question?
Yeah.
They're on the roof. They're making pipe bombs. Mm-hmm. How many pipes has he got on top of his roof? That he is hacksawing off to make a bag of pipe bombs?
Yeah, it feels like a lot of pipe bombs, which of course leads to one of my favorite scenes is when the worm apparently spits out a pipe bomb at a bag of pipe bombs about 200 yards away. I'm like, are we supposed to believe that was just like bad luck? Or are we supposed to believe that this is the smartest of all 4 worms and he's just a really good fucking shot?
This is the Michael Jordan of worms. He's just fucking nailing 3-pointers. And if Michael Jordan doesn't do 3-pointers, I'm not a basketball guy. I just put 2 and 2 together.
It's fine. Michael Jordan has,
Jesus Christ, as he shot that, the worm is just there going, nothing but net. Like, fucking hell, I made that shot.
What was that? Sorry?
Oh. Sorry, yeah, where did you lose me to? Sorry.
No, we're good. We'll keep going. I'm sure it's mostly Michael Jordan and 3-pointers, so it's fine.
I was just saying, the worm just turned around to himself and said nothing but net. Like
100%, 100%. And it was an absolutely unbelievable shot. And again, it speaks to like how on board you are with the film by that point. Something like that doesn't derail it. You're just like, yeah, sure. The worms just like spat a bomb at a bag of bombs from 200 yards. But it's just, other than that vaguely ridiculous scene, everything else just kind of walks a tightrope between horror, between comedy, but between the absurd, but just on the side of, well, if I was in this situation, what would I do? And it's like, yeah, I'd probably do a lot of the same stuff, Yeah. And just, it's all tied together by that great cast of characters, which totally carries the films.
Everyone hiding on, I think they spent about a good 20 minutes of a 90-minute film, by the way, on top of their roofs.
The store and
the store and the water tower and literally just trying to figure out what was going on because exactly as you say, what would you do in that situation? Well, these things are under the ground. As soon as you touch floor, you're fucked. So it is, what would you do? Like and then all of a sudden these things are cutting the foundation out from under you.
It's a great premise, but with a great setup. But with more comedy than your average monster movie, I guess. But it's a strange setup, but one that they pull off by not over-explaining things, by not over-elaborating. Like, they could have made this more complex, but like, no, we'll keep it simple. They're going to leave, they stay, the monsters are there. How are they going to kill these monsters? And that's about it.
Speaking of the monsters, speaking of the grab boys, how refreshing is it for this film alone that there's no explanation of where they came from, why they were there, and why you're only seeing them now?
Yeah, they kind of they brilliantly abandon it because, of course, she's Rhonda's the seismologist, and everyone keeps looking to her because, well, she's the professional supposedly. But she even says like, why do people keep asking me? I don't know anything about giant fucking murder worms. But they kind of have a few theories like, oh, maybe they're from space, and she even says it's like, yeah, they could have evolved, but it's like, why would we only be hearing of them now? Yeah. So they ask all these questions, and then they suddenly realize it's like, we haven't got a fucking clue. And like, that's fine. Like, they don't know, and we don't know, so let's just forget about it and just try and survive. And that's it. There's no big explanation at the end. Oh, they came from space. Oh, they've been dormant in the ground. No, fuck that. They're just giant worms that were trying to kill us. the four of them are dead, and we're fine. I'm going to kiss the girl. The end. Which they actually that was a change. It was one of the two things that the studio asked them to change. Well, three things actually. Not the studio, but another thing was based on the ratings.
Yeah.
But one was at the start. They weren't. I think I mentioned earlier about the fact that they weren't going to have anything to do with the monster for the longest time, and they made a change where Rhonda's running away from the monster. Where it's that classic again, as I mentioned, Evil Dead shot. That was added later because they wanted to sell it as a monster movie. The other thing at the end was that they were going to Valentine and Earl were going to leave town, go to the other town, but then turn around halfway and basically, Valentine was going to make an excuse, like, oh, this is why we have to go back to town, and really implying that he wants to go back for Rhonda.
Yeah, the excuse was she's got the lighter. Yeah.
But test audiences love them so much. Rhonda and Valentine, they're like, oh, no, they've got to have that resolution at the end. And the film literally bang on ends with a kiss. And it feels earned again, like they're not on screen much together. And she's quite an interesting love interest. You have that, that introduction where he's talking about like he wants to go with world-class titties and legs up to here. And he's disappointed when he shows up and it's just, I guess, what is it? Oh, she's a dork. She's a scientist. She's clearly attractive in that kind of, 80s, early 90s ways, but she's not dressed in a fucking bikini in the middle of the desert.
And they got the white sunscreen on. And
to try, just a kind of vague attempt to try and make a very attractive woman look slightly homely, I suppose. I'm not sure. But without having huge amounts of dialogue between them, they do have chemistry. Yeah, they totally do.
You see it. It's no more prominent than when he's what's the word? Helping to. I didn't want to say fix her legs, but just put the
bandages on her legs.
Yeah, there you go. I couldn't think what that heel.
I think you're going for tending to her wounds.
There's the one.
Yeah. So no, like you say, it's so cute because they don't actually, it's just all little looks, and he's so shy and he's so fucking, because he's all bravado, but then when he's around this girl, he's suddenly like shy and sweet and stuff. And of course they have, Fred kind of doing that thing, and he does it later in the film where he keeps looking over at them both like, what the fuck? Like everyone's got that friend, What's that? That
weird creepy smile.
Oh, dude, everyone's been in that position before when you're trying to get with a girl and you look over and your friends look and you're both giving you that look like, dude, fucking give it a break, man. But they're so charming together in these little moments. So that I get it. I wanted them to get together at the end. And I think they play it up when they have that final awkward interaction at the car. Yeah. And he like shakes her hand and he's like, dude, and he's like, yeah, I'm working towards it. And then he finally kisses her and you're like, oh, this is lovely. And then it's credits, end of film. And again, in lesser hands, if the movie wasn't cast as well, if the chemistry wasn't there, that could have been a horribly cheesy ending. But for this film, like everything else in it all just about works, which is all the more surprising given Ron Underwood's totally patchy directorial.
I was literally pulling the same thing up now because I was going to say directed by Ron Underwood and then go through his.
Well, I mean, there's only a few.
Go for it.
Well, the weird one is that when I was listening to the film, and I was thinking about the score, I was like, it's a weird film because obviously it's supposed to be a monster film, but I was like, this sounds like City Slickers.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then I checked afterwards, he fucking directed City Slickers. It wasn't the same composer, but dude, it sounds like fucking City Slickers, the music. I just imagine it being it. So like he did City Slickers, and where the fuck have I got the other things?
Heart and Souls. I always remember Heart and Souls with Robert
Heart and Souls, yeah. Mighty Joe Young was a big one. Yeah. But the reason why
he no longer makes any more films is because of Pluto Nash. One of the biggest bombs and worst films I've ever seen. I remember this film specifically because I was in Paris. And I remember looking up, and there was a massive... humble brag.
Yeah, I was in Paris in like 96 or whatever. And I remember I looked up, and I saw this giant poster with Eddie Murphy on it. And I was like a massive Eddie Murphy fan. And I've always been into films. I'm like, what the fuck is Pluto Nash? I'd never heard of it. Never heard of it. And there's this giant poster. And of course, back then, you don't have internet. You can't check in your phone. I'm just there, like left. I'm like, is this a pretend movie? Have they just put up like a fake poster? Pluto Nash.
Pluto Nash was released in 2002 on a budget.
Oh, it was in 2002, sorry.
On a budget of 100 million. Yeah. And it made at the box office a grand total of
1.8?
7.1 million.
Oh my god!
It lost so 93 million.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely the top 10 biggest bombs of all time. And as I said, it was bizarre that over here, because it was such a big bomb everywhere else, in the UK, it was totally swept under the rug. I think it went straight to DVD. A movie starring Eddie Murphy that cost over 100 million went straight to, or ostensibly straight to DVD. It might have had a very limited release. But as I said, I remember looking at that poster in Paris and being like, what the fuck is this movie? And I have watched it since, and I can tell you, it is as bad as people's. It's aggressively bad.
It is terrible.
You know, like you can have like, all right, you get a bad movie, then it's so bad it becomes good. It goes beyond that and just gets really bad again. It's one of the worst films.
Eddie Murphy had one of the best responses to that.
Mm-hmm.
He did an interview with Barbara Walters, and they were talking about Pluto Nash, and he said, I know the 2 or 3 people that like that movie, personally.
Yeah.
That was quite
I don't know who they're. I'm amazed 2 or 3 people like. They're probably the same 2 or 3 people who like Beverly Hills Cop 3. They're absolute fucking lunatics. Oh. But yeah, that is the reason you probably haven't heard of Ron Underwood. But yeah, it's a bizarre CV because he started well. Like, this is a really good film. City Slickers is a really good fucking film.
City Slickers is great, yeah.
Mighty Joe Young is okay. It's not terrible.
Heart and Souls is a charming film. I love that film.
Yeah, that's not a bad film. That's not a bad film at all. And then all of a sudden, it's like, you know, like a footballer, you be a striker and he has like 4 good seasons, but then it's like all of a sudden he has a season he didn't score. And he did a Christian Benteke. All of a sudden he had 1 bad season, the confidence is gone, and he can never score a goal again. Sorry to throw in football analogies. With Christian Benteke. But yeah, that's all I can think is that it was a combination of confidence is gone. And obviously, if you make Pluto Nash, nobody's giving you another fucking penny. All of a sudden, any good, kudos you had from these films, which he should have had money in the bank. I guess it doesn't matter how much money in your bank if you lose all the money ever on Pluto Nash.
I mean, we won't bury him too much. He is a prolific TV director.
Yeah, he's made a lot of stuff.
Of TV. And right up to now, he's still doing TV shows.
Yeah. Like, by all standards, he's a successful man for sure. But you suspect the reason he's not getting that movie money anymore is all down to Pluto Nash.
That is one big mark on his CV right there.
Oh yeah. Like,
I mean, Tremors. Tremors, you did really well. Oh yeah, no, Mighty Joe Young, Pluto. I'm sorry, we've already fulfilled the position.
Oh yeah, this is a complete error. Sorry. We've already got somebody. Directive differences, artistic differences. We just maybe go a different way. Anyway, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. Yeah, I can imagine he's had that conversation 7,000 times since then. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for the film, I think. I mean, let's be clear. It's a pretty simplistic film in terms of structure, but one that is executed almost perfectly.
Before we move on, let's talk about the actual deaths of all 4 of the
of course,
because I thought they were quite interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the first death being the killing in the rec room, if I remember rightly. That was the first one.
Yeah.
No, sorry. No, it wasn't.
No, it's not.
Yeah, no, it was my quote at the beginning. He killed himself. He ran into what, which was a great one because you just don't expect it. Yeah, it's like, oh my God, or something, whatever he ran into.
It's like you've hardly even seen the big monster. And at this point, of course, you're just dealing with the fact that it's a monster film. And on top of that, you're like, oh, he is the big, it's not one of the slimy tentacle things. It's a giant worm. And it immediately kills itself by being a clumsy bastard. You're like, wait, is that it? Is this finished? A 22-minute film where a clumsy worm just runs into a wall? But yeah, it's a great start. And obviously the idea that each worm who survives is slightly smarter than the one before is ingenious in itself.
And then you get the death by 1 million bullets in the rec room.
Yeah.
We've also explained as well. Then you get the
fishing for worms.
The fishing for worms, the explosion, and then the last graboid. Then the last worm, smart, and apparently he should play for any NBA team because he is fantastic.
Yeah.
But the reason why I wanted to bring this up is
with that great line at the end. Sorry, just but it's like, "Can you fly, sucker?" Now. This film, sorry, this is jumping on facts slightly, but while we're here, this film was initially given an R rating, but it wasn't because of the violence, it was because of all the swearing. There was 20 swears, and 20 uses the word fuck. And they've cut loads of them, but 2 of them are actually dubbed in the films. Like, usually when you get swear words are dubbed, it's usually on ITV at like 8 p.m. or something like this.
Can I guess the other one?
Well, there's "Can you fly, sucker?" instead of "Can you fly?"
Can I guess the other one?
Oh yeah, go for it.
We killed that mother humper. That's great. Be aware. There's 2 more mother humpers. That's right, 2 more mother humpers.
Mother humpers, yeah. And if you watch those scenes closely, you can actually see him lipping the words. He's clearly saying "fuckers."
Motherfucker, yeah.
Yeah, motherfuckers. So it should be, there are 2 more motherfuckers. I repeat, 2 more motherfuckers. But yeah, they changed it to humpers. But I can't think of another film when they've dubbed it in the movie, which is as rare as
the only one I can. Oh no, was it in the movie or was it the Die Hard? Was it the movie or the TV release where randomly the one I always remember is when he's meeting Alan Rickman for the first time and he goes, "Do you think I'm fucking stupid, Hans?" But it was always dubbed. Do you think I'm really stupid, Hans? And I can't remember if that's the movie or is that the TV edit.
That's the TV edit. Okay, that's what I mean. There's 1,000,001 TV edits for these kind of things, which I totally get. But an actually movie being edited after the fact, where they're like, "All right, we've got the swear words in, but we want to keep the scene, but we don't want the R rating, so we're going to have to dub them out ourselves." I'm sure there are other examples, but I certainly can't think of one. But anyway, sorry to...
No, that's okay. The reason why I wanted to bring up the last death as well, the flying one.
Yeah.
The foreshadowing, I thought was fantastic. Like at the beginning of the film, you've already mentioned it, Kevin Bacon stood on the cliff, pissing off the side. Well, that's where it ends, the same cliff.
Mm-hmm.
And when he does the stampede joke with Earl, and he does at the end, he goes, "It just all of a sudden hit me, stampede." It's like great foreshadowing from the very first minute of the film,
from the opening shot to almost the final shot.
To almost the final shot. Yeah, the stampede is what's gonna, or like making it go faster, which I thought was really, really good, and it looked fantastic as well. The not as it flies out, but just
it's not bad.
The landscape.
Yeah. Well,
oh my God,
that's,
it looks great.
That's another thing about if you have a Western, and again, they're very rare, these horror Westerns, certainly horror comedy Westerns, but it's easy to have those artistic moments because you are surrounded by just naturally cinematic landscapes. Like, you know, there's that scene when they're riding the horses and there's suddenly, it's like they realize, oh, we've got to have that classic Western landscape shot. And it looks absolutely gorgeous. I mean, he does it as well in City Slickers. And it's like, dude, you need to have more films set in these places because they're so just, you don't get a half decent cinematographer and you'll have a gorgeous looking film because the surroundings are amazing. Yeah,
the barren landscape is perfect. It's fantastic. It looks amazing.
And like you said, it's one of the things is that, and obviously I've alluded to this earlier, is the fact that there's no other monster film where you and I or anyone spends the majority of the time talking about monster deaths.
Yeah.
It's like every other film we're talking about, this death, when Steve died, when fucking Earl, whoever. It's like the people get killed. In this, the people getting killed, other than Egg Shen, who gets the memorable Jaws death, most of them are pretty low-key. The memorable deaths are all the monster deaths. And you watch it and like, why isn't anyone else copying this? Why isn't anyone else copying this?
You're always going to remember the death in a tire. Just the idiocy of it.
Yeah, but he was lame. He had to go. Like, he took so long to get off the floor. In fairness, I was happy to see him go. And I think we can all agree that we wanted Melvin to die. But he was such a little fucking douchebag. I thought, just let him get killed.
Where's his parents? Like, where's his parents?
I was thinking it was like a Corey Feldman thing. Is it Corey Feldman's in The Burbs? Like his parents just aren't fucking there. I'm assuming it's another situation like that. Like he has parents, but they're never really there. So that's why he's a little fucking asshole, because he just sits around when other people, like his parents are basically staying somewhere else, but they're paying for the guys to come over and do the work on the house. He thinks he's the king of their castle, so he's there sitting like talking shit. Everyone fucking hates him because he's a little brat. And the right thing to do, and my only issue with this film, is the fact that Melvin did indeed survive to the end credits, which I thought was a massive disappointment. Because I would have loved to see that fucking... Oh, he's such a little bastard. But right, so that's his shtick.
We usually move on to facts, but I kind of want to shake it up a little bit if that's all right. And I want to...
Yeah, go for it.
I want to cover Legacy.
What, all 7 fucking movies in this?
Well, all 7 movies, kind of... Like, you don't have to watch all 7 movies, but...
No, you don't. You definitely don't.
It gives you a life cycle then of the graboid, which I'll go into because I really...
So wait, right, before we start this then, right, if we're doing Legacy, there's 7 movies, 7, let me repeat that, 7 fucking Tremors movies. There's a TV show, and there was supposed to be another TV show which was going to star Kevin Bacon, which didn't get funding. So 7 movies got funding, or let's be clear, 6 after this one, a TV show got funding, and then the one TV show where Kevin Bacon was going to come back for, and then like, no, we're not giving you money.
I love
Fucking
it.
lunacy.
Like, sci-fi going, yeah, no, we're all right. Like, come on.
Sci-fi as well. The fun, like, the money they piss out towards absolute dog shit TV shows and movies. Crazy.
You get Tremors 2, Aftershock. Tremors 3, Back to Perfection. Tremors 4, The Legend Begins, which is the prequel.
Yeah.
Where Michael Gross, who plays Burt Gummer, plays his great-great-great-great-granddad or whatever.
Brilliant. Of course he does.
Then you get Tremors 5, Bloodlines, where Jamie Kennedy is now his long-lost son. Spoilers for anyone who wants to watch these films, by the way.
Fantastic.
Then Tremors, A Cold Day in Hell, where Burt and Jamie Kennedy again are fighting graboids in Alaska or somewhere like that, Antarctica, somewhere cold.
Nice.
And then Tremors, Shrieker Island,
which was as recent as 2020. So this shit's still going.
And that stars again Michael Gross and John Heder, who people would know as Napoleon Dynamite.
Yep. Okay. Sure.
So
why not?
I said the film. So the first two sequels, Tremors 2 and Tremors 3, introduces the life cycle of the graboid. Mm-hmm. So basically, what they're saying is that in Tremors 1, they killed the graboid too quick for it to reach its second iteration. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm gonna read this out to you now. Hang on. Where's it gone?
Kind of like Kong Skull Island. Like they were fighting Kong, but it wasn't a fully formed Kong. So these are ostensibly like baby graboids from the original Tremors, and then they get bigger and worse.
No. These are the fully fledged graboids. Okay.
Yeah.
So the next iteration after a graboid, once a graboid is eaten as much as it can, it then turns into a shrieker.
Okay.
After eating a large amount of food, the graboid dies, but its tongues live on and begin the transformation by turning into shriekers. When a shrieker is born, it blows out the side of the graboid, leaving a dead 50-foot worm with a hole in its belly.
Nice.
So Tremors
Very
2,
charming.
Yeah, Tremors 2 introduced the shrieker. So basically, you've got these two-legged tongues running around.
Yeah. Well, the tongues probably were the worst bit of it. They're pretty fucking gross. So yeah, sorry.
There's a Tremors 3 then introduced the final stage, the Arse Blaster.
The Arse Blaster. Yeah. Like in that Stephen King book, Dreamcatcher. Similar thing. Yeah.
The Arse Blaster is the next and final stage in the graboid's evolution, and is the worst. Not worst, worse.
The worst. Okay, yeah. Brilliant.
To become one, shriekers again have to eat a large amount of food and give birth to at least one shrieker before entering their cocoons. So a shrieker can give birth to another shrieker, and the way they do that is by puking up shriekers. So once they've given birth to at least one, they then enter their cocoons, and when the shrieker emerges, it sprouts wings and spits flames out of its rear, giving it the name the Arse Blaster. So it can fly by farting fire.
Fantastic.
Before it dies, the Arse Blaster dies after it eats a large amount of food and spits out a graboid egg, which starts the cycle over again.
Jesus Christ. The only good news about that story is it means that nobody has to watch Tremors 2 through fucking 7 or whatever, because I'm sure they're not done, because it looks like they've got their foot down on these goddamn Tremor sequels. Oh my God. Let's be clear. I preferred it when I didn't know anything about them. This still doesn't explain where they came from initially or where the fuck they've been for the rest of history.
In number 2, they explain that they might have killed the dinosaurs.
Oh, ace. And what, do they like hibernate or something and now they're just popping back up?
It's something like that. They've never really explained it yet. I mean,
the fact is it doesn't really matter.
In number 2, they go to Mexico to stop one, so...
Oh, okay, fair. Well, like you said, I'm going to skip. I mean, the interesting thing, I guess, is that they were actually going to make a relatively big budget sequel with Kevin Bacon, but he decided to do Apollo 13 instead, which feels like a pretty wise choice. That film did relatively well, and that's when
one were on to another at that point. Then
Yeah. So they reduced the budget considerably, and obviously went for the straight to DVD route. But it was interesting that when I was looking this up, one of the things it said was that Kevin Bacon couldn't reprise his role, and neither could, and I forgot her name now. She's a country singer, Reba McEntire couldn't reprise her role, and I was like, who gives a shit about Reba McEntire reprising Rose Heather Gummer? I mean, she's fine as Heather Gummer, but is it that important? She is massively famous, and I had no idea. She is referred to as the queen of country singers. And it was her first role.
She chose to do this film. She was like, "Oh yeah, I'll do this film for you."
I mean, she's knocked out the park. She actually postponed her honeymoon to make sure she could film this movie specifically. But yeah, she's got like 7 gold albums, 5 platinum albums, 2 Grammy Awards. Like, she is mega, but of course, country music just doesn't travel. So we had no idea who she is. But yeah, supposedly Heather Gummer, that's the character's name. Reba McEntire being in this movie was like a big deal. But to us, it's just like, who the fuck's Reba McEntire? I had no idea.
She's just some weird woman who teams up with a lunatic and collects a lot of guns at this point.
Yeah, but she's, to her credit, she's good in this. She has, a small role. But they both, like, if anything, it's Burt or Michael Gross, obviously, who overdoes it in terms of that kind of a little bit on the nose for his character. But she's totally on board with it, but she plays it a little bit more low-key, and I think she's actually really good in this, despite her limited role.
If you want to see overdoes it, watch Tremors 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, yeah. If you want to see Michael Gross go into the fucking rim, I'm sure he does it umpteen times in the sequels. But so all those sequels, a TV show which was cancelled, a TV show which unbelievably wasn't made. This movie has long legs, man. Long legs in terms of a legacy.
Well, and crazy. Kevin Bacon has actually said he's not giving up. Like, he wants to do another, like, whether it be Tremors TV show or another Tremors film, like a proper theatrical one, not one of these.
I would love to see him reprise.
He said he's not giving up. He is not letting go of trying to do another Tremors that would work for Valentine.
Well, that is the thing. As good as the film is, as good as the premise is, when I think of this film, the first thing I think of is Kevin Bacon. Like, he's, I know obviously Michael Gross has gone on to establish himself as the kind of, the caretaker, I suppose, of this saga because he's in every single movie. But I think for the majority of people who haven't seen the sequels, the majority of people will have just seen Tremors. And when most people, like myself, think of Tremors, you think of Kevin Bacon because he's so good in this film. He's so charming in this film. And I would love to see him reprise his role as Valentine. And I'd love to see them kind of go back to basics and do another Tremors. And like you said, you could totally do a TV show. I'd like to just, at this point, can you do a sequel? Because you would have to just ignore the other ones. I don't think that works. I think maybe do a standalone
but they've kind of been doing
TV show.
They've kind of been doing that anyway, haven't they? Like, a lot of things. Like, I guess all these Texas Chainsaw Massacres are forgetting all the random sequels that happen.
Halloween did that.
Halloween has done it. Yeah, it's forgotten them all. And it's
Superman did that. People forget Superman Returns is a direct sequel to Superman 2.
Yeah.
Like, people forget, like, Brandon Roth is playing literally Christopher Reeve's Superman. Like, it's the same Superman, supposedly. He's just been gone for 5 years and then comes back. Like, and they're just like, well, let's just kind of sweep Superman 3 and 4 under the carpet.
Yeah.
But they were going to do it with aliens. I mean, that was the plan with when they said they were going to do another Aliens film with Sigourney Weaver and Michael Biehn. They were just going to be like, all right, we're going to pretend Aliens 3 and Alien Resurrection didn't happen and just bring them back. They do it all the fucking time.
Terminators have done it constantly.
Like, Terminators done it.
Yeah. So it can be done. And what's the ones that have done it now? Child's Play.
Yeah.
They've rebooted it with Mark Hamill as the voice of Chucky, but Chucky is still going. You've still got the Cult of Chucky and all these ones. And now they've actually done a Child's Play TV show for Sci-Fi. Sci-Fi have given a Child's Play TV show, but not a Tremors TV show.
All I can think is it's a budget issue. But even if you move away from Sci-Fi, and all I can think is maybe they have the rights to it now or something. Because you think with all the money going around with Netflix, Amazon, stuff like that, and the money they pump into some really shitty TV shows and movies, you think if Kevin Bacon wanted to make a Tremors TV show, surely somebody wants to give him the fucking money.
I know, but do you know what? People are watching now going, what? The EE guy?
Oh yeah. I guess most people would know him as the E, but he's great in the EE adverts. Kevin Bacon's super fucking charming. He's super charming. But anyway, while we're at it, I mean, rather than go to facts, as we're doing things all backwards. I mean, we've already mentioned the score, the fact that it sounds more like City Slickers. Yeah. I mean, it's actually by Ernest Truce who composed it, but I don't know much of his stuff, to be honest. And other than the fact that it sounds a bit like City Slickers, I didn't actually find the score all that memorable. In terms of video games, it's much like Kevin Bacon's TV show. There was a 2003 third-person survival game made by Rock Solid Studios, and it was due to be released on the PS2, GameCube, and Xbox, and it was actually cancelled. So there was supposed to be a Tremors video game that got canned, and it would have come out, interestingly, around the same time as The Thing. Remember the Thing video game? Yeah. Which I guess it would have been a similar vibe. So I'm not sure if they had any kind of like, well, if they're making a Thing video game, why don't we make a Tremors one? In terms of, I guess, you know, if you were going to do a video game, I immediately thought, like, if you did like a larger scale version, like, so it could still be in a town, but it'd be a bigger town, and it would be more like a large scale survival horror, like just, but with more of them. So there would be, say, 20 graboids, and so you could finish the game by ostensibly just surviving to the end of the game and escaping town, but you could also finish the game by killing all the graboids. So kind of like, remember the big daddies in BioShock? Remember they were fucking nails to kill? Like that, but even harder to kill. So say there's like a number of graboids, you could just go around and kill them all if you had the skill to do so and the wares or whatever. So there's two ways to finish the game. You either kill all the graboids or you just get the fuck out of Dodge. So, you can play it either way. And essentially, if I was going to get this made, of course, I'd get it made by Creative Assembly because they did such a great job with Alien Isolation. Because I'm like, wow, they've taken one movie and just made a perfect video game. Why can't they do it with Tremors? But I was like, I thought that wasn't a bad idea for, what a Tremors video game could be.
I don't know if I like the fact that we've moved this all on its head, mind. I'm a little.
It's okay. It's okay. We've just got facts left. We've got facts.
So no, in regards to video games, Tremors 2 actually had, or Tremors 2 or Tremors 3. There wasn't a video game based on it, but there was an in-film video game called Graboids. It was an arcade game.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So in there, like they released the Graboids, and there was an arcade machine in the film, and it was kind of like Snake, basically.
Snake was the bomb. Yeah. The video game that everybody had in 2002, basically.
Yeah. So basically, you'd quite a 3D version of that, like an arcade for your phone, an app kind of thing. Mm-hmm. That's a decent game. And if you want to, then it can eat enough, and then you've got another level, which is you're a shrieker, and then you got another level then where you're an ass blaster.
Dude, I think that's a great job, because I think the world is ready for the return of Snake. Like, everybody fucking loved that game. And the great thing was that it was like everybody played it, so you were always comparing your high scores with your friends. Yeah. Only now it's a Tremor themed one with like you said, with the addition of ass blasters. So I like, you could call it Graboids colon ass blasters.
Did you mean to do that?
No, I didn't, but it works fucking perfectly. Yeah. So Graboids ass blasters, the most popular mobile game of all time, without question. So I think, if anything, you're on to win it.
Let's not release this podcast, and let's actually sell that idea.
Just to Graboids ass blasters, without question. That's how we make our money. Yeah. So we'll sell the idea of the big budget version to what the hell are they called? I forgot to a Creative Assembly. Yeah. I've got too excited about our idea. It's like, remember the title: Graboids ass blaster. It sells its fucking self, and then we'll keep the idea and the rights to that and make millions. So I think we'll be fine here. I think we'll be fine. All right. Well, that was a surprisingly successful video game section. Yeah. How about the facts, good sir? Because I hear you have fucking tons of them.
There's a couple, and I know you've got a couple as well. So I think we're going to be interlacing with facts, but there's a couple of interesting ones. Like, Kevin Bacon will later call the filming of Tremors to be the single most fun time I've ever had making a movie in my entire career.
Totally buy that.
Yeah, but it goes on, because then prior to the film's release, Bacon felt that the film was a career low. I broke down and fell to the sidewalk, screaming to my pregnant wife, "I can't believe I'm doing a movie about underground worms."
And it did, you know what I mean? Well, it did bomb as well. Like, well, not bomb, but I think like I think it was like the budget was like 10 million, and I think it made 16 million theatrically, but it made a lot less than the studio was expecting. And it was on VHS where it totally blew up, absolutely blew up this film. And that's what I watched it. I don't know anyone who was like, oh yeah, I saw Tremors in the summer. Everyone watched it on VHS.
It was VHS. Well, actually, it might have been BBC One the first time I saw it.
Like, maybe, but it was just one of those. It was like a total cult film which just kept growing and growing and growing. But yeah, it's turned into a big hit. Obviously enough to have 6 sequels. So yeah.
So I've already mentioned the phallic resemblance and the interior shots. So although Tremors was not a big hit, you've already said this, during the theatrical run, it became a runaway smash in the home video market and ultimately tripled its original box office gross with VHS sales and rentals.
Yeah, and it'll just keep making money since then, I'm sure.
Yeah. We've actually covered a lot of these because
Well, I've only got a few more. I can read off mine quick. I mean, the film had a bunch of alternative names, some of them terrible, some of them fantastic. Beneath Perfection, I thought that was actually quite good. Dead Silence, shite, I hate that. And Land Sharks, which is Land Sharks. We were talking about the Jaws reference. Land Sharks is fantastic. Yeah, is it on the nose? Absolutely. But these are, they're fucking land sharks. They're worms, but they act like land sharks. So I thought that was great. There's actually a Tremors exhibition in the Museum of Western Movie History in Lone Pines, where it was filmed, where they actually filmed this, right, which I thought was cool. So the idea that you could actually go and see a Tremors exhibition was pretty great. But the shrilling sounds, the sound effects of the graboids themselves was so successful and so gross that it's actually been used in a bunch of other horror movies. You know, that kind of that dude scream who you hear in like a whole bunch of films. Well, like the graboids are the movie equivalent. So they were using Starship Troopers, which again had a lot of similarities in terms of creature design, and Kong Skull Island, amongst others. But I thought that was pretty cool.
Predator 2, randomly ants as well.
Crazy ones. And I think the last one I've got, which I thought was an absolute belter, the screenwriters actually initially envisioned Bert and Heather to be played by Linda Hamilton and Chuck Norris, which I was like, don't get me wrong, I love Bert and Heather as they are. You know, they are brilliantly cast. But if you're like, you're offering me Linda Hamilton and fucking Chuck Norris, I'm like, dude, I kind of want to see the version with Linda Hamilton and Chuck Norris. That's pretty cool.
The film would be over quickly because nobody's touching Chuck Norris.
Dude, I gotta be honest, like, I know it's turned into like a whole meme thing. As much as I love 80s movies, I love 80s action, I've never seen a Chuck Norris movie. I just never liked the look of him.
Have you not?
Never. I just always thought, like, with the beard and the kung fu, I just always thought he looked lame. Like, I grew up on like Stallone and fucking Schwarzenegger, and then you see these like low budget Chuck Norris films. I was just like, they look shit. Like, I struggled to watch fucking, what's his name with the ponytail? Seagal. Like, I hadn't seen many Seagal films. It's just like they look budget. I was more of a Jean-Claude Van Damme guy.
I love Van Damme. There's a Bruce Lee film with Chuck Norris in.
Chuck
Norris is the bad guy, and it's an iconic fight scene. And they're both getting ready. You've seen that when they're both dressing. There's a video floating around. I'll have to send it to you, where how perceptions change if you change the music to something. Because they added 70s porn music to that fight scene. And the fact that they're getting
stripping off. Well, it's kind of like famously the end of Skyfall. Like, I remember I watched it in the cinema. I was like, dude, this is starting to feel a bit like Home Alone. And someone, of course, then immediately, not because I said it, because other people obviously thought it, they added the Home Alone music to the end of Skyfall. And it's like, dude, it's just Home Alone with more guns. and Joseph Fiennes. Is it Joseph Fiennes at the end? Is that his name?
Of Skyfall.
With the beards and all that shit. He was in the original Screw. I mean, amongst other things, the terrible 70s version. What the fuck's his name? Sorry, I'm gonna have to look this up. Make sure. Okay. No, Albert Finney. Sorry, I'm thinking Albert Finney. Albert Finney's in the end of it. Jesus Christ, I completely mixed that up. But Albert Finney is just walking around with his ridiculous beard, looking silly. I mean, I basically hate Albert Finney because he ruined. I mean, I think I loved every version of Scrooged ever. Like, it's just a great story. I was like, you can't fuck up Scrooge. And then a couple of years ago, I watched the 1970 version of Scrooge with Albert Finney, and it's like Albert Finney is playing Scrooge like he's deaf. Like, it's just the weirdest. His voice is so fucked up. It's a horrible film, a horrible interpretation of the character. And despite the fact that I'm sure Albert Finney has done great work throughout his career, I just associate him with that and that weird fucking Home Alone shit from the end of Skyfall.
Pulling this back to Tremors before you...
Yeah, that makes sense. This isn't the Albert Finney
before podcast, you bury Albert Finney anymore. Going back to your comment about Chuck Norris. Mm-hmm. So I got a long one here. And then I got a good fact as well. Almost all of the actors were cast through open auditions, a rare practice for studio films. There were offers, however, for the role of Valentine to Bill Paxton, Matthew Modine, and Bruce Campbell.
I like all those. I like all those.
Yeah, Bruce Campbell, I think, would have been great.
Bruce Campbell would be fucking great.
The chin, mate. Just the chin.
Oh, I love Bruce Campbell. Yeah, but he's got that classic thing of like a charming loser. Like he'd be good with the physical comedy. Yeah, I'm totally on board. And Bill Paxton, of course.
Before we say anything, I've already said I love this film. I love Bacon as Valentine McKee, and I love Fred Ward as Earl. But if we were like recasting, definitely Bruce Campbell. And then it goes on. Jack Palance was considered for the part of Earl Bassett. Bruce Campbell and Jack Palance.
That'd be pretty good. That'd be pretty fucking... I mean, the only thing is... No, yeah, because he is a bit of a loser. Like, the only thing with Jack Palance is that... And obviously, he ended up in City Slickers, didn't he, in his next film? So he obviously has
because it goes on, Ron Underwood was too afraid to reach out and ask Palance.
Yeah.
But then he would work with him on his next project, so...
Yeah. Well, Jack Palance, the only thing is you're getting a very, like, a tough guy. So you're getting the complete opposite of Valentine's character, you know, because Valentine obviously ends up being quite heroic, but it's not natural to him at the start. It kind of grows on him. But I think with him, I like the fact that Earl Bass, or Fred Ward specifically, is able to be a bit more subtle. Like, he's the more level-headed of the two, but he's not inherently tougher. He looks quite tough, but he can play it quite subtle. Like, he doesn't feel the need to like play that character in a caricature way. Like, you just buy him as a human being.
Yeah.
But I think if you bring in Jack Palance, you end up with a much tougher character by definition. You know,
you got a much tougher character, and then you've got a more
goofy character,
enthusiastic character with Bruce Campbell.
I think, don't get me wrong, I think it'd be fun. I want to see that version as well. As much as I love the version with Kevin Bacon, I also want to see that version. So yeah, I'm on board.
So only a few more. In the original script, there's an opening scene showing more of Edgar Deems and Old Fred. In it, the two are shown as close friends who meet up to trade livestock. But Deems' prize donkey is eaten by a graboid, setting up why Edgar climbed the electrical tower. This scene was actually filmed, but the studio thought it was too boring, and the filmmakers thought it revealed the mystery of the graboids too soon.
Yeah, I actually quite like the fact that he was just up on the pylon. And like, you know, again, especially if it's a shame almost that they did, you know, kind of try and sell it as a monster movie. Like, if you went and you didn't know anything about it and you're just like, what the fuck is he doing up there? Like, that's so weird. If you didn't know anything about the graboids, if you went in completely blind into this film, you would see that at the start of the film, like, wait, why the fuck is he up there? And, you know, the way they talk about it, it's like, well, was somebody with a gun, but he also had a gun and he just waited him out? It's like, you know, you'd be thinking the same thing. And then, of course,
it adds to the refreshing feeling that they're not spoon feeding it to you. Like, in this film, again, they haven't explained what the graboids are, as we've already said. So all of this as well is just leading more to the mystery. Yeah,
which I just wish it's one of those films, like, if I could go in not knowing, you know, if you just like, someone's like, oh, you should watch this film, and they don't tell you anything about it. Like, I really think that first 20 minutes would be so effective.
Yeah.
Because, as you say, it really is a kind of like, wait, there's no hint that this really is a monster film until suddenly they're a fucking monster. So yeah, I thought that'd be really cool.
So only a few more from me, mate. The scene where the car is being swallowed into the soil was originally supposed to be longer, with BB Bosch kicking out the front window, climbing on the hood, and then getting submerged in the sand. However, the effect that was used to suck the car in wouldn't work properly, and there was no more nighttime to shoot the remainder of the scene.
Oh, fair enough, yeah.
Yeah. I've already mentioned that one about Val standing at the beginning and at the end. And you've already mentioned the original ending, so I am done, mate.
Well, yeah, and I think that's pretty much it. I mean, we've done things backwards, obviously, with the score, Video Games Legacy, everything all over the place. But I mean, that's pretty much it. So I mean, again, in terms of, like, we already know, well, we don't know your score. We know you like this film. I assume you think it holds up. And you're going with, well, he's putting up 5 fingers. So, 4 fingers and a thumb. Let's be, you know, technically correct. So this is a 5-star film.
I was drinking. For me, it's a 5-star film. But I will emphasize that it's a 5-star film for me. And it is highly because of nostalgia.
See, you think so? I don't think, from my perspective, I don't think you need nostalgia for this film. I think it totally holds up. As I said, I think other than those 2 little things I mentioned, mobile phones and Melvin, you know, but even the Melvin thing you can get away with nowadays because kids are starting to dress like that again. I think this film feels timeless. I think the vast majority of the practical effects totally hold up. I don't think anyone, if you showed this to someone, you didn't tell them, I don't think they would pick this out as being specifically 1990. I think they'd probably think it was a bit later. I don't think you need, as I said, I remember watching it, but I don't have any strong sense of nostalgia attached to this film.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm like, oh, I remember every scene this. Like, I totally didn't. I watched it when I was younger. I remember liking it. That was it. 20 years ago, longer maybe. And going back and watching it, I thought it was really, really fucking good.
It is fantastic.
I think it's a 4-star film, but the best kind of 4-star film. Like
it's such a good 4.99 star film.
You're gonna go with that, fair enough. Well, like I said, I'm not even gonna attempt to talk you off the ledge. Like 5-star. If you tell me you think this is a 5-star film, I'm like, yeah, I get it. Like,
I love
it. Great film.
I love it. As you said, it doesn't feel dated. It could be any time. It's just, we've already said it's in its own little bubble as well. It's its own little contained story. You take all these sequels out of it. You take everything.
Oh, forget about it. I don't even watch. I don't know anything about the sequels other than what you've told me. And of course, now fucking Ass Blasters is going to live on in my memory forever. But this is just a perfectly.
It's a fantastic film. It's great. I love it.
It is. It's 95 minutes long. There's no fat in it whatsoever. It's chock full of super memorable characters, great performances, a great monster, a terrible name. I'll give you that. Graboids it's just the worst fucking. Well, I thought it was the worst name in the world until you started with fucking Ass Blasters.
But I love how you've gone past the Shriekers, by the way. You just pinpointed out.
How can I remember Shriekers when you said Ass Blasters? Ass Blasters. I mean, Shriekers is okay.
What I love about naming the Graboids is the fact that they're named by a bunch of people. Like, not a focus group or anything. Do you know what I mean? It's just a bunch of people going, what do we name it? Like, we get to name this. What do we name it?
Yeah.
And it's just they grab
that's why it's lame.
Yeah.
Yeah, they grab you.
And I do love it.
I hope that's the reason. They were just like, oh, Graboids. It's like, oh, that's lame. But it's like, well, get the characters to name it.
Yeah.
Then it's a good excuse to call them Graboids. And now we're stuck with 7 films of Graboids, Shriekers, and Ass Blasters. But yeah, other than the name, which it does have its own sense, like charm, because of the fact that it's named by the characters.
Yeah.
As I said, I mean, it's a strong 4, or as I said, I'm not going to argue with it being a 5-star film, because I really think, in terms of, I think horror comedy is very hard to nail. There's not many films which do it well. I'm sure there's a whole bunch I'm not remembering, but as I said, structurally, everything about this, especially the characterization of Valentine, it does remind me of Shaun of the Dead. And I think of like Tucker and Dale versus Evil, a lesser known horror comedy, which is absolutely
fantastic film.
The only thing with that and a lot of other ones is that they really do lean more into comedy, whereas this one, and again, Shaun of the Dead doesn't do it as well either. Shaun of the Dead does go more into blatant comedy.
But Tucker and Dale is refreshing in the change-up. Sorry. Just you mentioned it now, and I just got.
I do love that film,
but it's refreshing that it's from the hillbilly side, like the hillbilly murderers. It's from And I said refreshing a lot in this podcast.
I'm not criticizing. I love Tucker and Dale, and I love Shaun of the Dead, but both of those films they're more comedy than horror. And you think, in terms of the threat, they're willing to remove the threat for the sense of comedy. You think of Shaun of the Dead and the famous record scene.
Yeah.
They're like, well, it doesn't matter that it doesn't make sense. That it's taking the zombies 7 hours to get to them, where they throw records. It's like, we're leaning into the comedy. In this, the comedy never comes at the expense of threat. Like, the threat is always there. They can't go just standing on the sand and telling jokes, and then suddenly the graboid conveniently slows down. It's like, if they go down there, they get killed. And to get that balance between, staying funny, but retaining that genuine sense of threat throughout, it's a rare beast, no pun intended. And I think this film absolutely nails it. And so that's why I think it's genuinely special.
I think I already know the answer then, but would you recommend it to others?
Oh, 100%. Like, just be clear. Like, and I think it's something we're trying to do, even if it's not something we've planned. Is films which have shown up on Netflix and Amazon and stuff. Films which are easily accessible. So if you listen to this podcast or you want to prepare for it, we want to make it as easy as possible. We can't always do that. Buckaroo Banzai is on the radar in the distance, and I'm pretty sure that isn't on fucking anything. But Tremors is on Netflix. And I thoroughly, if you've managed to listen to this and you haven't seen it, or if you haven't seen it for years, like, go back and watch it, because it totally stands up. It totally stands the test of time. Great.
I can't say any more than that. It's the same for me. I would recommend it to others. Yeah.
Cool. So before we go, is it just down to me to?
Tremors was my pick last week, and I gave the perfect delivery for that. I remember by just saying Tremors.
Oh, Tremors. I'm not going to be as succinct or classy as you, obviously, but what I'm going to go for is it's because I listened to a podcast on Boys in the Hood, and they were talking about all the similarities and all the stuff lifted directly from Stand By Me.
You really didn't need to pause them. Boys in the Hood.
Well, oh, yeah. Well, I just want to be dramatic. But yeah, basically, Stand By Me, one of the most important films of my youth, a film which, spoiler alert, absolutely stands the test of time. An absolute 80s classic. And yeah, so if you get the chance, Stand By Me, we'll be doing that next week.
A really lighter film than we usually cover, about a group of friends trying to find a dead body. So really interesting.
Yeah. But it does have it's a different kind of film, that's for sure. Yeah. So we're trying to mix things up. So yeah, next week, Stand By Me. But as always, thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed it. But join us next week for Stand By Me. Cheers, guys.
Thoroughly looking forward to it. Thanks a lot.
Oh yeah, and before I forget, because I always forget, here's Rob telling you where you can actually find us.
Yeah, so we're currently on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under Hey You Guys 80s or at Hey You Guys 80s. And we're also on email at heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any emails, any recommendations, or any reviews you have. But whilst we're on about that, wherever you get your podcasts, please also smash the subscribe button. Yes, I said smash.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Leave us a review and leave us some 5-star ratings as well. But make sure they're 5-star ratings.
Yeah. We're not interested in 1 star. 5-star. If it's not going to be 5-star, don't move smashing anything. Just leave your opinion to yourself. 5-star ratings only. But yeah, if you could do that, we'd really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See you next week.